Good morning, everybody. This is the news that we are waking up to for Thursday, January 30th, 2025, date 1072 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. And breaking right now, literally just as I went to record, this news hit the Kyiv Post website. According to the Kyiv Post, the Ukrainian Military Intelligence Directorate has launched a massive cyber attack against Gazprom and Gazprom Neft, Russia's largest gas industry, right? State-owned gas industry. And we've talked about them in the past. We know that for the first time in 20 years, the company posted a loss last year of $6.1 billion. They've laid off half of their staff, 1,500 people, and they posted a loss for the third quarter of 2024 of $3 billion. And they are on track to lose money in the fourth quarter, though we don't have the final numbers for 2024 yet. This instrument of terror that has pumped money into the Russian war machine for 25 years. Currently, the website is down. The customer application is down. You can't pay your bill. You can't get receipts. The website itself is down, and the company is under attack. Details on this will undoubtedly emerge throughout the day, and on tonight's Live at 5, we'll give you an update. Now, overnight last night, we saw the Russian Federation send 81 drones at the territory of Ukraine. Of those, 76 were dealt with, either shot down or taken out with active countermeasures. That's a 94% interception rate. Pretty good. But that does not include the attack on Zaporizhia. In the last 24 hours, on the Zaporizhia front, all up and down that oblast where the fighting is, we have seen 16 airstrikes using glide bombs, 190 drones come in, rocket and artillery attacks. And despite all of that firepower being leveled at the people of Zaporizhia, we have seen only 2 deaths, although there are dozens wounded. The same is true, or something similar is true in Sumy, where 4 were killed in last night's drone attacks when drones targeted civilian apartment buildings. Dozens were wounded. 160 people had to be evacuated from their homes as the apartments burned. Now, the big news is not the constant campaign of terror against the people of Ukraine, but rather this hit right here. This was an SBU and Special Forces operation hit. Drones targeted the Andriy oil pumping station. Now, we've seen the Ukrainians hit oil depots for domestic use, right? We've seen the Ukrainians hit oil refineries that produce refined oil products for domestic use and potentially for export. But what we have not seen before was the Ukrainians hit oil export pipelines. This is a brand new phase of this war, and it could explain why Saudi Arabia is upping production. What in 3 years, the Ukrainians have been very cautious about doing anything to affect the price of oil on the world market. They wanted to keep their friends close, right? Despite the fact that that's what pumps the big money into Putin's war machine. We saw Saudi Arabia say that they would increase production back in October. If somehow they and I'm speculating here. I am speculating. I want to be clear about that. But here's why, right? Think about what this pipeline is that they hit, or rather the pumping platform on the pipeline. Pumping platform, it's what makes everything move through the pipe, right? This pipe is responsible for getting all the export crude to Belarus, that Belarus then refines. Where else does this pipeline go? It goes to Ust-Luga, the biggest export terminal for crude oil that Russia has. Now, it's not the only pipeline that feeds Ust-Luga, but it's a major part of getting oil to Ust-Luga for export. We have not seen the Ukrainians hit a crude oil export transport line in 3 years of the full-scale invasion. Apparently, what happened yesterday, they hit the Andriol oil pumping station. This is a critical component of the Baltic Pipeline System 2. They hit the station filtration pump platform, hitting fuel additive tanks, which caused a fire. And it's still burning, right? Let's be clear, it's still burning. This pumps oil to the Ust-Luga terminal in Leningrad, and Russia has been forced to stop the transit of oil to Ust-Luga, which means right now, no tankers are getting filled. That's huge, huge. The implications of this should not be underestimated. The Kyiv Post also reports that this is a critical component of pumping oil into Belarus, right? So direct export to Belarus, if you consider Belarus to be a separate country, which the Russians clearly don't. Now, again, pure speculation on my part, but just suppose Zelensky had told, or some elements of the Ukrainian government had informed Saudi Arabia that they were going to start hitting the export channel, and that in order to keep prices of oil stable on the international market, we needed another 2 million barrels a day. Well, that would explain OPEC talking about increasing production. Yes, it would. Now, I don't know that to be the case. I want to be very clear, but there has been a lot of speculation about why Saudi Arabia would increase production after they intentionally cut it 2 years ago. And this may have something to do with that. It would be a major political shift for Saudi Arabia, however. I want to highlight that. So I am probably wrong, right? It's probably not that. It's probably something else. I have not heard another analyst, or I've not heard any analyst say anything like this. This is just my own psychopathy playing itself out in the news. But we'll see. We'll see what the analysts say. Now, the other thing that got hit in Tver last night was the GRAU 23rd Arsenal, which is a hardened missile site, right? This is where they store missiles. We don't know exactly what was hit, but the locals say that there were over 20 explosions from the warehouse and 3 buildings on site, and that site continues to burn at this time. Syria held its first strategic talks with the Russians yesterday, and we learned, or rather I learned, why Syria is talking to the Russians at all. Given the pain that the Russians have inflicted on these folks, and that these folks consider Russia to be their enemy quite rightly, why are they talking to them at all? I think the answer may be that one of the topics of discussion was the maintenance and ongoing execution of the power plants. The Russians keep the electricity flowing in Syria. Now, one of the first responsibilities of the government, one of the first things they want to make sure that they do is keep the lights on. That everybody's productivity goes up when the lights are on. It falls dramatically when the lights are off. And so these guys want to ensure that the lights stay on in Syria. It looks like they may have to deal with the Russians to some extent. And it looks like they are very thoughtfully trying to make sure that the lights stay on. They need somebody, they need the expertise of those Russian engineers to keep the lights on. And that you can understand, boy. Like, that's a compelling reason. If they can get some reparations and infrastructure money out of Russia and Assad's ass back in the country for prosecution, you can almost understand why they would leave the Russians in Tartus and the Khamenei air base. So we'll see what happens and how deeply the Syrians are forced to deal with Russia over this question of keeping the lights on. Ingenuity, thy name is Ukraine. So this is a naval patrol boat of the Ukrainian Navy. They don't have a lot of these, but what we saw them do is mount a Vampire rocket launcher on one of these boats, and now they're using it to shoot down cruise missiles and possibly drones over the Black Sea. And so before the KH-59 missile the other night could even get over the territory of Ukraine, it was shot down by this boat that had one of these BAE Systems Vampire launchers on it. Thing of beauty. One day after implementing this executive order, Trump has rescinded it. This was a freeze of basically all federal funding, like complete insanity, just complete incompetence and insanity, just grinding the gears of government to a halt, making sure that nothing can be done, at least not for the people, without putting it in the hands of one of his oligarch friends so that they can rip us all off. It's obscene. Now, this freeze would have halted several humanitarian programs in Ukraine. But with this freeze undone, those programs should continue. I wish I could say that this was the worst thing that the Trump administration tried to do in the last 24 hours. It was certainly one of the most destabilizing, but it was not the worst thing morally, in my opinion. This is the suspension of all diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, as well as a ban on transgender folks in the American military. The commander-in-chief of the American Armed Forces has just said to 15,000, an estimated 15,000 active duty trans and intersex folks, that Uncle Sam does not want them, that their years of service are worthless to us, that they are not people that we want to defend this nation. I think that this is a disgusting betrayal of everything that America is supposed to be. The armed forces of the United States was the first social component of U.S. culture to really integrate, to end discrimination. Everybody that went into the military got treated like shit exactly the same way, whether they were white or black or Hispanic or whatever. And together, these men and women and other non-binary folks have kept us all safe in our beds while we slept. And this is our thanks to them. Fuck you, Donald Trump. Fuck you and all of the disgusting hobgoblins and minions that support you as you tear down the greatest army in the world. Fuck you. Now, this gentleman, Roman Schwartzman, spoke to the German parliament, the Bundestag. And I'll play, this is a video, I'll play it for you so that you can hear him in his own words. But this gentleman, when he was just 7 years old, lost his entire family to the Nazi menace. At 87, the Russians blew up his house in Ukraine. This guy has seen it. Let's see what he has to say.
Putin намагається знищити нас як націю, так само як Гітлер намагався знищити єврейський народ під час Другої світової війни. Тоді Гітлер хотів вбити мене за те, що я єврей. Зараз Путін намагається вбити мене за те, що я українець. Putin.
You know, we used to say never, never again. Never again. And right now, the United States has been subverted by the people who want to do it again. They're even building camps in Texas. This is not the hysteria of some woke kid. This is what's really happening. And it's happening on our watch. All right. I'll see everybody in the live tonight. I'll have more on the cyber attack and everything else that's going on. And how the United States is just working actively to destabilize the world.